with your reality. Big government, big business, the mainstream media, and orthodox science all tell you what to believe. Yet the holes in their stories only get bigger every day. Welcome to your wake-up call. Welcome to your Red Pill. Welcome to Mental Self-Defense Radio and the Jake Shannon radio program. Now, here's your host, Jake Shannon.
Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to Mental Self-Defense Radio. I'm your host, Jake Shannon. This is the show where Utah gets its daily dose of liberty and logic. I want you to think of us as the Second Amendment for your mind. This is the show that fights to close that gap between rhetoric and reality. Now, follow my instructions closely. Write down our call-in numbers. You're going to need them. 801-254-5855 in Salt Lake County. 801-470-5855 in Utah County. And 801-670-5855 in Weber and North Davis County. Now, just as Thomas Jefferson before me, I've sworn an eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the minds of men. When you call in, I may not agree with what you say, but I will always fight for your right to say it. Now, today is March 7th, 2011. Here in Salt Lake City, it is cloudy, and I was just getting used to the nice warm weather. Boy, I am really looking forward to spring. Today, we actually have another knockout show. After last week and having Jabbar Ghanem come in and be our expert on the Middle East and liberty there, additionally, we had the legendary Dr. Thomas Sawes, one of my biggest heroes ever. So we're booking some really nice guests here, and today is no different. Today, very shortly, and as a matter of fact, we are going to be talking with Neil Howe. Mr. Howe is the co-author of a book called The Fourth Turning. Now, I was actually turned on to this book by some fans of the show and libertarians, liberty activists, liberty-minded people. And the more I looked into it, this is very, very interesting. Now, my listeners, regular listeners of the show, know that I am hardcore with regards to freedom, liberty, the Constitution. But what you may not know, and actually I've got a bit of a following, not to toot my own horn, but I actually have a book, a historical book that I wrote that is coming out, published by ECW Press out of, it's a small East Coast boutique publisher, coming out this summer. And it's a history book. Now, it's not a big history book. It's in terms of politics or anything like that. I've written other stuff like Teocond and Anomaly, which deal with what do we know? How do we know what we know? What's called epistemology in philosophy. And Teocond specifically was really digging into the way that the Tea Party movement, how it started, and how it was co-opted and infiltrated by establishment Republicans and GOP members. Now, this new book that I have coming out is strictly on history, and it's on the history of a very obscure form of wrestling known as catch-as-catch-can. It was particularly popular between the Civil War and World War I here in the United States. It was also popular in England as well. That's where this particular style, catch-as-catch-can, originated in a county there called Lancashire. But anyway, one of the challenges that I found as I was writing this book on history, especially something like wrestling, where for a long time people weren't in on the fact that it was a work, or that the outcomes of the matches were preordained. So it was really a challenge to be able to look through and try to sift through and be like, boy, what is really the fact and what is just promotional hype put out by the promoters of these matches. And so it really gave me an appreciation of what is involved with regards to historical scholarship and what's called the historical method. Now, the reason why that's relevant today is that Mr. Howe, who we will get on the phone here very shortly, he wrote this book. And ironically enough, all the old-timer wrestlers that were actually there told me this very same thing. Now, they didn't say it as eloquently as Mr. Howe and Dr. Strauss did in their book, but that history runs in cycles. Now, they've made a major contribution to the theory of history in their book, The Fourth Turning. And we're going to talk to Mr. Howe about this, about the different kinds of cycles that happen. And most of them are based on generations, like the baby boom generation. What was their role in our current climate today, now that we are beset, not just internationally, but right here in the United States with all these political revolutions happening, whether they be in Wisconsin, whether it be the Tea Party? What role did the baby boomer generation have with regards to the political turmoil and these popular dissent movements that we see today? And what does that mean? What if history is cyclical, meaning it runs in a reliable pattern that you can see over and over and over again? Well, if we're going through one phase of the cycle, then what is it that Strauss and Howe predict is the next phase of the cycle? Is it more turmoil and recession, although I would prefer the word depression? I think that's probably a little more accurate. Or are we heading towards a new enlightenment period, or a new period of abundance and greatness and honesty? That'd be nice for a change, wouldn't it? So I would really suggest, if you have questions about, more philosophical questions about history and about the role of generations and cycles in history with regards to where we are today and where we're going tomorrow, I really suggest you call in. This is an incredible opportunity. Again, the book is called The Fourth Turning, and we'll have Mr. Howe here shortly. If you want to check out their website to get an idea, go to Fourth Turning, and it's spelled out. It's not the numeral 4, but spelled out, fourthturning.com. There's also a decent Wikipedia page on them as well. Gives you kind of an overview of their particular ideas. They talk a lot about archetypes. They talk about archetypes and cycles, how generations play off in history. Now, we're going to be getting Steph, you want to get him on the phone? While we're waiting for Mr. Howe, I just wanted to bring up a few things that some listeners had sent me through our Facebook page. An FYI, remember we were railing, and we were successful. You guys did the hard work, not just with slacktivism, what I call slacktivism, when you just post on Facebook and pick up the phone and call your representatives. We did just that alone did tremendous work, and I'm going to ask you to do the same. I got this message from Elizabeth on Facebook, HB59, which is kind of like our own little Utah little mini Patriot Act. Looks like we voted, well, we scared the reps away from it for a while, but it's rearing its ugly head again. So it is time to pick up your phone, not only to call me, but to call your rep and let them know to vote no on HB 59. Now, this is the one that would allow warrantless arrests and searches without a warrant. Hello? We do still have the Fourth Amendment here only so far as you fight for it. And this HB 59, Representative Handy, I think, is the one that's responsible for it. Anyway, it is back up. So it was voted down in the Judiciary Committee in February. Now they're resurrecting it with a slight change from reasonable to probable cause, which is good. I mean, that is one of the things I rail against, and why I don't like all this, the ways that profiling is leaking its way, trying to knock down probable cause down to a lower level of evidence, which is reasonable suspicion, before somebody can detain you or search you. Now, they may be voting on this today, so let's not dawdle, okay? Call your reps and tell them to vote no on HB 59, okay? I'm going to give you the phone number for the switchboard up on the Capitol there, 801-538-1029. Again, vote no on HB 59 if you believe that you have a Fourth Amendment right still. We have to fight for this, people. 801-538-1029. Write it down, because we want to make those lines busy with so many calls to say no on HB 59. One more time, 801-538-1029. So interesting stuff. Also interesting, this business that we've got about transparency in our own legislature here. I don't get the idea. What is it, 477? I just don't get it. Why can't we see what they're doing with our money? It blows my mind. So again, that switchboard number up on the Capitol. Call up. Number again, 801-538-1029. Tell them to vote no on HB 59 because warrantless searches and seizures are against the Constitution. Now, before we get our guest, Mr. Howe, on to talk about the fourth turning, cycles in history, we've got a caller. I want to get him because this looks pretty off topic, but nonetheless, let's talk to him and see what he's got to say. Mike, are you there?
Yeah, how about Governor Arnold for governor of Utah, huh?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Herbert and put in Arnold.
Yeah, I don't know about that. What are you being facetious, I hope?
Yeah, I know he ruined California, but why not try him in Utah, huh? Let's give him a second chance. He's got to be better than Herbert.
Well, the funny thing is how all the allegations about Herbert, greasing the palm of his buddies with state funds and construction and stuff. Where did all that go? That seems to have just disappeared.
Oh, yeah, that was terrible graft and corruption, and nobody cared about it. I mean, the people that voted for him didn't care about it. They just voted him in anyway.
Yeah, well...
That's amazing.
That's why we're here, right, Mike?
I didn't vote for him.
That's why we're here, right, Mike?
I voted for the third-party candidate. What did you say?
I said that's why we're here, huh?
Yeah.
Who'd you vote for, Mike, in the governor's race?
I don't remember his name now, but he was like the independent candidate.
Oh, yeah, I can't remember his name either. I know you're talking.
I voted for him because I couldn't stand Herbert with all that rumors of corruption that was going on. But I didn't trust him with illegal aliens, and also he was wishy-washy on the death penalty. I personally asked that guy, Governor, are you in favor of the death penalty for murderers? And he said, quote, well, yes, but it's not a deterrent, unquote. Well, it sure is a deterrent. When you execute a murderer, they never hurt or kill anyone else again. And so it's a deterrent for future crime on the part of that very murderer.
Hey, thanks for the call, Mike. Hey, Mike, we got to go. Come back after the break. We will have Neil Howe on the line talking about fourth turning. K-Talk.
AM 630, K-Talk. Talking about Utah since 1965.
Buckwild Mechanical Bulls here, and we want to give your party some kick. We want to challenge your guests to ride a full-size, genuine mechanical bull. We buck them and chuck them at any age and any experience level. Riding a mechanical bull is an opportunity no one can pass up. We control the bull so we can take you slow and easy or rock the spurs right off your boots. Our 16 by 16 foot landing pad and experienced operators make the ride as safe as possible, complete with a PA system to announce riders and entertain crowds. We have the darndest hootin' and hollerin' setup in town. At Buckwild Mechanical Bulls, we entertain everything from company parties to good old church gatherings. We guarantee to have the lowest rates and most energetic crew in the state. We know any reason's a good reason to have a mechanical bull, so call us today at 359-0440, and we'll make a believer out of you. Remember, that number is 359-0440. Buckwild Mechanical Bulls. Give your party some kick. 359-0440.
Direct Nutrition is the place for all your supplement needs. We carry the highest quality products at the lowest prices. We are located at 12433 South, 4th Street, inside Pioneer Comprehensive Medical Clinic in Draper. Let our knowledgeable staff assist you in getting the right products you need. Call 801-572-0828. You can even order on the internet and have them delivered to your home. Go to www.directnutritionstore.com, come in, call, or look us up on the internet. Direct Nutrition is the place for the best quality nutritional supplements.
It's back. The 35th Annual Home Remodeling and Decorating Show returns to Southtown Expo Center April 15th through 17th and is bigger and better than ever. Filled with remodeling experts, decorating specialists, including the Painted Lady Lori Clark, and a chance to win a Bosch appliance package valued at over $7,000. Courtesy of Inspirations Kitchen and Bath. And guys, if you want the garage your friends will envy, check out the Ultimate Garage feature with everything you will ever need to have the best garage on the block. In addition to a weekend filled with hundreds of home improvement specialists, do-it-yourself workshops, a cooking stage filled with hourly demonstrations, and a student throwdown from the Culinary Institute, on Saturday, attendees will be treated to a 2-hour cooking school, including free goodie bags, tons of prizes, recipes, and mini workshops, all sponsored by Fresh Market. Want to be part of our 35th anniversary celebration? Do you think your family recipe is an award winner? What about your cake decorating skills? To enter our top family recipe or anniversary cake decorating contest, send your recipe or decorated cake photo to homeshowcontest@gmail.com. That's homeshowcontest@gmail.com. Mark your calendars for April 15th through 17th and come to the 35th Annual Home Remodeling and Decorating Show at Southtown Expo Center in Sandy. Discount tickets available at all Fresh Market locations, in the Salt Lake Tribune and Deseret Morning News. For information, log on to thehomeshow.com or call 801-571-9012. See you there.
The voice of Utah. AM 630 K-Talk.
K-Talk.com.
Number one for the most live, local, two-way talk.
Welcome back, Mental Self-Defense Radio. Today is Monday, the 7th. Man, we are heading towards spring and fast. Oh, I cannot wait. I also cannot wait to get to our guest today. Now, we will shortly. We're still trying to get through on the phone. We had him just before the show, but we're trying to get everything hooked up. But I want to talk to you about some of the challenges of history because, you know, a lot of times when we make our arguments to each other, we reference history. You know, we say, oh, well, back on this X date, so-and-so happened, and that proves my point. Well, I want you to remember something, that the further back we move in time, the less verification we have, unless we have some sort of archaeological artifact or something of that nature. The further we move back in time, the less we really know, like real knowledge. And so sometimes, I mean, we see how easy it is to manipulate the media. Okay? MSNBC, Fox, I mean, nobody trusts either one of them anymore. Every once in a while they give you something true, and then they go around and ruin their credibility by inserting bias. And to be human is to be biased. You're always going to have a particular perspective based upon your life experiences, your particular philosophy or religion. But that's the case with these people that write history. Aeschylus, the famed Greek historian. A lot of times, a lot of the wars from that time, ancient Greece, those are the records that we have of the Peloponnesian War. What if he's wrong? Or what if somebody told... I mean, most of us as children have played that telephone game where, you get like 20 kids together in a big circle, and one kid starts out it says a phrase of some sort, whispers it to the next kid, and then the next kid whispers it to the next. And it goes all the way around. And by the time it gets to that last kid, the last of the 24 in that circle, the entire phrase has completely changed. The telephone game. Well, history in a lot of ways is a lot like the telephone game. It's just, instead of done over a distance, it's done over time. And so we have to really try to vet our sources. And this is, like I said, when I was writing this book on the history of wrestling recently, it's going to be released here, called Say Uncle. That was one of the things that I had to learn, was the importance of what historians call primary resources. That is, the people who were actually there. If you could get that and talk to them, then you actually maybe have some sort of idea. But then it's just like eyewitness testimony. They could be wrong. Memory is most certainly not perfect. That's been proven time and time again. Oh, we got another caller. This caller wants to talk about the governor. Randy in Salt Lake, what's going on?
Well, there was another thing that really got me upset with this governor, and I never did vote for him, but...
Was that independent guy, was it Farley Anderson? Was that his name? I think that's his name. Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I was trying to get Peter Caroon in, even though he's a Democrat, but I thought that would be better than what we have. Based on some of the things he said, Peter Caroon said he would not work for the very issue that people are so upset about now, or this immigration things. And there's another historical thing that people don't even take into consideration, because here in Utah we had a Supreme Court ruling that allowed us access to a public resource, which is the water in this state. And the cowboy legislators up there at the Utah legislators, the self-centered, self-serving legislators, decided they didn't like the fact that the people were coming and fishing in the streams and rafting and so forth. So they made another law to override what the Supreme Court had ruled on. And they ignored. They were saying America, the land of the free, and they were calling this Tea Party type stuff, patriotic fervor to get this new law in up at the legislature, but they didn't take into account the historical uses of the resource, that it goes back to the Magna Carta, where the people needed the use of the streams, and the king, he was trying to control that. He wasn't allowing them to even use the streams or the woods. So when the people got the Magna Carta put into place, they demanded that they have a common area on the streams. And that transferred over into our history, because we were an English colony. And that's why every single state in the United States has a history of having their waters as a public resource.
Well, it's the English common law.
Yeah, exactly.
Most people don't know that the Magna Carta was just one liberty document in a long history of liberty documents, and one of the most recent being then the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence that is along those same lines as the Magna Carta and the importance of that. You know, I think what's interesting here, Randy, is I was over the weekend looking at an article. Did you know that 57% of the land in the state of Utah, I think it's 57%, is owned by the state?
By the federal government.
Yeah, that is absolutely nuts.
Yeah, well, it was held as a reserve. These areas back when we acquired all this land, when Thomas Jefferson acquired it, was held as a reserve. They had the concept of having a resource reserve, and this was a vast area, and they used these woodlands and things, and the area that ended up being the public domain of the federal government was land that was not homesteaded, because it was the land that was harder to homestead. It had harsher climates. You had the higher mountains, and you had the desert areas. These were the areas that never did get homesteaded, and the government just held on to them when they started finding the resource bases that they needed there, and they've continued to hold on to those, because there are many states that don't have a resource base as rich as this state has. So this is not only a resource base for the state of Utah, it's a resource base for the whole nation. And I venture to say that the oil companies and folks like that have co-opted that concept, and they've turned it into a private resource for a global government.
Yeah, you know, that doesn't necessarily contradict my reasoning. You know, I think the interesting thing is about property rights. You know, I think that was another big thing that English common law really helped to establish, that you know, feudalism was on the way out, and that actually you and me and the plebes could own property, and we had a right to it. And I think that's you know, that is one of those things. The problem is the tragedy of the commons, right? You're aware of that problem.
Yeah, but this is why I was so upset with Governor Herbert, because he had a brother-in-law that owned water on a river in the state of Utah. There was many conflicts of Gary Herbert that people did not realize or just overlooked, and I went ahead and reelected this person.
Yeah, I hear you. Hey, Randy, I hate to cut you short. I really do, and please do call back. But I actually have just been told that we have Mr. Howe on the line, and I have to say this about Mr. Howe. His fans are rabid. Mr. Howe, are you there?
Jake, I'm here. Thank you.
Hey, you know, I got to say that I had so many people on Facebook independently say, hey, you need to get Neil Howe on the show. He's amazing.
Well, that's nice of you to say.
Well, and I was leading in. I'm a bit of an amateur historian. I'm not making any claims to having the historical chops that you do, because I really find the theories and the ideas that you've established, I find them very, very fascinating. In particular, the cyclical nature of history. And I wrote just a small book that's going to be published here this summer on the history of wrestling. Okay, I mean, it's really not a big grand like politics or you know, generational type of things like your work, but it's very interesting because a lot of I was concerned with primary sources, and so I went to a lot of these old time wrestlers and was talking to them about history, and almost invariably the ones that were older, and these are guys that are 70-ish, okay, they were telling me, you know, history runs in cycles. You know, sometimes you have one thing that's popular and then it dies out and then it grows back again because everybody else forgot, and that one particular, move now works really well again because everybody forgot about it. But history has been working like this since all the way back to Egypt. Now, that's just the world of wrestling. Your book, The Fourth Turning, and for those who are interested, you guys have a website, right? fourthturning.com?
Yeah, all of our books are available on Amazon and on our website as well. And you can just Google me or Fourth Turning or anything like that, and it'll come right up. Okay,
great. Now, so for those people here in Utah that are listening, and again, you have no idea. I really have not had anybody request a guest as much as you. you're a historian. You're also an economist.
Yes, economist and demographer. I'm actually, one thing I do, I'm a senior associate at the Center for Strategic International Studies here in Washington, D.C., and I help direct something called a global aging initiative, where we're looking at demographic trends worldwide, particularly those related to the global aging of the world's population, which is happening in a particularly to an extreme degree in the developed world, and increasingly rapidly even in the developing world, and how we're adapting to that and what that means for geopolitics and the kinds of things we see around us today.
Wow, boy, I could talk to you for hours, because I'm sure all our listeners would tune out. But just as a side note, I have I worked as a financial mathematician, and I worked in the reverse mortgage space, and so I actually had to do a lot of actuarial data with regards to mortality and morbidity in order to create valuation models.
Yes,
So,
it's interesting that everyone is aware that we're living longer. Particularly the huge gains in acute care and treatment of cancer and heart disease and all that. Not so much, obviously, in chronic care, since in many ways we're actually getting less healthy because of what we eat and how we live, right?
well, and also the sad fact of iatrogenesis, that is.
Yeah, doctors actually causing people, right?
Yeah, even though we're living longer.
But what's interesting is that when you look at the developed world, and this is what people don't really realize, about 2/3 of what is driving society-wide aging, meaning the climb in the median age of the population, is not greater longevity of individuals. It's rather declining fertility, the fact that we're having fewer kids. And you look at Southern Europe, Eastern Europe, Japan, or South Korea, where the fertility rate is around 1.2, that's about half the replacement rate, meaning about every generation or so, the population shrinks by half, right? I mean, that's how extreme the low fertility is. And what that does is that inverts the normal population pyramid. Instead of having your usual, population pyramid is just a few people who are old, right? And it gets fatter and fatter and fatter as you get to the younger ages, right?
Yeah.
Increasingly now, for the first time in history, we have large groups of societies, which is kind of like an inverted Christmas tree, right? There are actually fewer people at the younger ages and more people at the older ages. A constant fertility projection of Spain or Portugal or Italy shows a society where the median age by 2040 is going to be around 57 years old.
Wow.
The median age.
Wow.
That's
And
half of the people are older than that. And consider they retire now at about 57. I think the fiscal implications of that are pretty clear.
Well, this is actually, again, me going to be a little bit of a nerd here. And, I actually started a reverse mortgage consultancy, and it's still going. It's going gangbusters, as a matter of fact, because I saw these similar trends that you're talking about. And the thing that's frustrating is that, I'm 38, okay? And so I still look at my paycheck and I see Social Security being taken out. But because of these demographic shifts, I'm pretty certain it's not going to be there when I'm ready to take back the money that I put into the system, And one of my contentions is that our future here in the United States, at least, it's going to be a lot like what Japan looks like today.
Well, I think that's overblown.
You think so?
I'll tell you, of all of the developed world countries, meaning all of the OECD, Western Europe, Japan, all the English-speaking countries. The United States is actually the youngest. And we're going to be increasingly younger relative to the rest of the world for two big reasons.
Oh, that's
One
good.
is we have the highest fertility rate of any of these countries. We are actually at replacement rate. We're at 2.1.
Is there anybody that's out reproducing us out
No.
there? Nobody.
No, not in the developed world.
Wow.
So we are at the top in the developed world. There are a couple that are close, like Ireland or something, much smaller countries.
Hey,
But we're
Mr.
at
Howe,
the
Mr.
top.
Howe, can you hang on after the break?
No problem.
Thank you. We'll be right back with Neil Howe, author of Fourth Turnings. K-Talk, the voice of Utah.
AM 630, K-Talk. We give you the truth, and you decide.
Searching for the perfect golden deep-fried battered halibut and cod? Maybe you would prefer a delicious flame-grilled burger or seafood chimichanga, bursting with lobster meat, crab, and diced green chilies. Well, Neil's Halibut and Seafood is the place for you to go. Neil's offers succulent, crisp, tasty fish, prepared the way it should be. Neil's fresh homemade clam chowder, Parmesan halibut, and grilled halibut or salmon will have you returning time and time again. And when you're in the mood for something different, there's always unique on Neil's menu. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You truly are in for a treat. Indulge yourself on a grilled or crispy fish taco, complemented with Neil's homemade coleslaw. Nobody else makes coleslaw like Neil's. Drop into Neil's for football Mondays and Thursdays and enjoy your favorite fish taco or a cold one on draft, both only 99 cents after 6 p.m. You'll find Neil's Halibut and Seafood in Draper at 122nd East and 123rd South, just off I-15. Neil's Halibut and Seafood is worth the drive. Open 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week. Dine in or take out. Neil's does it right.
Let's be real. Smoking sucks. It's a nasty, expensive, unattractive, and thoroughly unhealthy habit. There's the acrid smell in your clothes and on your breath. Yuck. Not to mention the increased health risk that cigarette smoke presents to those nearest and dearest to you. Call Salt Lake City Family Hypnosis now for your free consultation to learn how you can quit today. 801-738-5390. That's Salt Lake City Family Hypnosis, 801-738-5390.
Talk radio is a cutting edge of the medium, and you have a chance to learn radio from the ground up. Come be a producer for Drive Time Live, the Mills Crenshaw Show on K-Talk. It's a volunteer position that will put you in touch with the newsmakers and news breakers. Just call Dickie Shannon at 253-4883, 253-4883.
The Voice of Utah. AM 630 K-Talk.
K-Talk.com.
Number one for the most live, local, two-way talk.
Welcome back. It is Mental Self-Defense Radio. I am your host, Jake Shannon. Now look, if you are just tuning in, I suggest you go and go raid that box of Q-tips, clean all the crust out of your ears, and listen up. We've got a very, very smart guest on the line. We're very lucky to have him. He is Neil Howe, and he has co-authored a book called The Fourth Turning. Now, in it, the thing that's really exciting is that he's a historian, and he's discerned these patterns, these cycles in history. And the good thing about that is, if we know where we're going, or if we know where we've been, we might have an idea of where we're going. Isn't that fair to say, Mr. Howe?
I think that is fair to say. We got into this by our first book, which was on generational change, and in fact, the idea that people are shaped differently by their location in history. Right? You were a child at a certain time, you came of age into adulthood at a certain time, shapes you and people your age for life. And as you go through the rest of your lives, you fill each role, right, of young parent, political leader, elder. You fill those differently because of those early experiences. And this sequence of generational shaping actually, in turn, governs a cycle, a rhythm of social moods over time. We identify these patterns in terms of four moods or four turnings, each lasting about 20 years or so, which is about the length of a social generation.
Right.
And the sum total of four of these things is a period about 80 or 90 years long, which we call a saeculum or a natural century. And you can really look, for example, at American history very easily by looking at these long-term rhythms that alternate, for example, between outer world crises, great wars, great depressions, and the inner world crises or cataclysms that we often in American history call the great spiritual awakenings and the kind of the cultural upheavals. And these two kinds of turning points is the structure around which you can see these four turnings operate. and it remains in effect today, and we're at a very interesting juncture here.
Now, I've got two questions for you, and then I've actually got a caller here, Mark in South Jordan. But let me just ask you these questions real quick. So,
yeah.
Okay, based upon this saeculum, this natural century, and these turnings, you're talking about like baby boomer generation. That's one generation, and then there's a one that supersedes them. So let me ask you this. Where are we now?
Okay.
for the listeners who may not be, are lay people, may not know the terms that you use. And then where are we heading towards in terms of what can people expect? Is it going to be more doom and gloom, or are we heading into like an enlightenment age?
Well, we're heading into an event-filled era, which we call a fourth turning, which is a turning filled with urgency, even crisis, rapid changes in public history. Great national challenges will appear and have to be dealt with. This is not a doom forecast, because typically in our history we've risen to these challenges. We've felt great about ourselves in doing so, and we've solved seemingly intractable and even global problems along the way. So historically, the prognosis is that in the end, at least we hope, things will turn out great, and again, we will solve huge, long-standing problems. But along the way, we're going to have a lot of stress, hardship, and urgency along the way. This is the pattern of what we call a fourth turning. The easiest way to think of these turnings is think of them like seasons of a year. So you've got spring, summer, fall, winter, and if you want, we could just say a few things about each of these turnings to locate people.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to bang them out, okay. I've got this gentleman holding on the line. You want to take his call, and then we'll bring it right back?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so waiting here to talk, we've got Mark. Are you there, Mark?
Yes, I'm here. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. You are on the air with Mr. Neil Howe.
Thanks for taking my call. And Neil, I've been a big fan of yours for years. So.
Oh, great.
I definitely, I go all the way back to Generations. That was a great book.
1991, yeah.
Yes. I'm kind of interested in, how the hero generation, or what you call the millennial generation, how they're going to, in my opinion, they're kind of going to drive the future in a way as far as the direction we go. Are we going to go, the collectivist kind of authoritarian route, or are we going to go the liberty route, which I know Jake and I are interested in? It seems like when you look back in history, that generation has taken us, Thomas Jefferson being a hero, took us the liberty route, but then you have the GI generation, which kind of went the collectivist route. So what's your feelings on the way the millennials are shaping up and the direction they can take us?
Well, I think millennials, and this is true of most generations, they disappoint people on both sides of the ideological spectrum. I'm serious about that, because generations cut across politics and ideology and kind of cross the grain in a way which doesn't fit with older people's conception of what, being on the left or the right should be, okay? Mm-hmm. So, for example, if you look at millennials, one of the things I think you will find is that when it comes to the role of government and community, you'd probably define them from a boomer's perspective, right, as being on the liberal side. There's no question about it. 2/3 of the millennial generation voted for Barack Obama in 2008. And in fact, the vote in 2008 above age 30 was totally, absolutely split between McCain and Obama. The entire margin was settled by millennials under age 30. The first time any election has been decided by the under 30 vote since we've been measuring, age bracketed polling, going back to the 30s. So that was kind of remarkable. And I think that what people liked about Obama, obviously one of the things they liked is the fact that young people trust government more. They believe there's a greater need for community. They look up at boomers and they see an extremely individualistic generation that's kind of, fled government. They don't like unions. They don't like doing things in groups. They move into these exurban communities, and they don't even know their neighbors, and, no one wants to be taxed. And, boomers strikes millennials as a generation that spent a lifetime throwing off social obligations, right?
Sure.
don't tell me how to dress, don't tax me, just don't. Whatever it is, don't do it. So that's the one respect that you could say, well, they're kind of a liberal or collectivist generation. But on the other hand, you could also say, and I think there's a lot to say for this, is you could say that in terms of culturally and in terms of social habits, that in some ways millennials are actually an extremely conventional generation. They're moving away from risk-taking, for instance. And one of the most remarkable things about today's millennials is that they've marked probably the most dramatic decline in youth crime in American history. People don't recognize this. There's been like a 65-70% decline in serious youth crime according to victimization surveys, and that's really the gold standard. 40% decline in teen pregnancy and abortion. The lowest rates of smoking and alcohol in grades 8, 10, and 12 ever measured since we started measuring this in the 70s.
Wow.
And you can go down a lot of things, all kinds of measures of risk. Even having sex during teenage years is down from what it was, going all the way back to the late 1980s. This aspect, the risk-averse aspect, also the fact that millennials believe so strongly in family. You ask millennials today what's their favorite way to spend time, and they say with their family.
Yeah.
The complete disappearance of the culture gap between generations I find astonishing, as well as the huge new popularity of multi-generational living. And one thing I do when I travel around is I ask people, I just ask people in audiences, I said, what's the iPod overlap in your family? In your 50s, how many songs on your iPod are on your teen's iPod or vice versa? A typical answer I get now? 30%. Same song.
That's funny.
Same brand name clothing. We watch the same movies. We talk to each other about our careers. Today's parents are much closer to their own kids than they recall being close to their own parents. And that was the greatest generation. You remember the greatest generation?
Sure.
Well, they were great when it came to conquering the world and all that. But as parents, that's not the way. Boomers at least don't remember being nearly as close to them as they are to their own kids. And I think that is very interesting. And you could say in that sense, well, I don't know, couldn't you say that that's kind of a conservative generation? They want to rebuild a middle class.
Sure.
They want to rebuild, they want to re-strengthen the mainstream, even in the attitude toward gays, right? It's very interesting that the millennial attitude to the gay community is rather, use them to shock the middle class, right?
Mr. Howe, let me ask you a question, because the great thing about your research and about demography is that it cuts through, like you were saying, politics. It doesn't really care about left or right or Republican, Democrat, that kind of thing. One of the things you were talking about reproductive rates, and again, I'm a bit of a quant, kind of a numbers guy, and I don't have access to the data like you do. So I'm really actually interested in this. I saw some report that was purporting that somehow Muslims and Islam, those countries, and I am not one of those people that is, I love, anybody that's peaceful, that's fine with me. You know what I mean? So I'm not against any group of people like that. I'm an individualist. And that said, I noticed there's a lot of rhetoric sometimes, especially on the right, against Islam. Is it true that this report I saw said that they were out reproducing Islam?
Depends completely on the country. It depends on the society. For example, Iran, everyone's alarmed about Iran. Iran has experienced the most rapid decline in fertility of any country in the world in the 20th century. They were something like at over 6 children per woman at the time of the revolution, right, against the Shah.
Yeah.
And on into the early 1980s when they had the war against Iraq, and they were sending kids out, you remember that human minefield clearers, that would go out? I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah.
The fertility rate in Iran is now below replacement. Can you believe that? It's down to 2.0, and the Persian regime has actually sanctioned the spread of birth control clinics. So you think don't be fooled by stereotypes. There are examples of Islamic majority countries which have very high fertility rates. Yemen is a good example. Iraq is a good example. Pakistan, Afghanistan. But then there are those like in North Africa, which are very low. Algeria, Tunisia, Libya. So it varies.
And what about the Chinese? That's the kind of typical, if we're going to go about stereotypes, everybody's always saying, oh, those Chinese, they've reproduced us. What kind of rate are they at now? Do you know?
Yeah, Chinese are down at just below replacement rate. Remember, they've had a one-child-per-family policy in place since Mao.
What's the difference between Iran, which is that more of an organic reason why there's the decline versus, the actual law in place in China that's...
Many demographers think that the fall in fertility in China, while everyone says, okay, the one-child-per-family law, is actually may not even be responsible. It may just be epiphenomenal, not really a cause. And the reason is when you look at Hong Kong or Taiwan or other Chinese societies that are just nearby China, right, but aren't governed by the same law, you see the same decline in fertility.
Interesting. So is it what would you attribute that to? Specifically not China, but let's say Iran.
Families having fewer kids because they figure with fewer kids they can educate them better, invest more of their own time in raising their own living standards. In other words, a developing economy with a modernizing, productivity base has other options for individuals rather than just multiply the number of children to do well in old age. And this is a pattern that we've seen particularly emerge particularly strongly in Asia.
Mr. Howe, can you hang around for one more break?
No problem.
Okay, great. We'll be back. Neil Howe, the fourth turning. K-Talk, the voice of Utah.
AM 630, K-Talk, where Utah talks and Utah listens.
Wake up without yuck in your lungs or the dark cloud of lung cancer or heart disease looming over your future. Have the energy and health you deserve by simply calling Salt Lake City Family Hypnosis at 801-738-5390. Forget what you've seen from TV and the movies. Hypnosis is powerful and natural and has been accepted by the American Medical Association since the 1950s. Our methods have proven time and again to be more effective than pills, patches, gum, and willpower for quitting smoking. If you've tried the rest, now call the best. Salt Lake City Family Hypnosis, 801-738-5390. That's Salt Lake City Family Hypnosis, 801-738-5390. Be sure to ask about our proven weight loss and natural breast enlargement programs. Visit us online at slchypnosis.com.
Hey, this is Nye, the computer girl from PC Laptops. Turn up your radio. It's our Ultra Mega Super Deluxe Spring Sale at PC Laptops on the best desktop and notebook computers on the planet. Remember, all PC Laptops computers come with a lifetime service guarantee for free. Now that's peace of mind. We got demos, scratch and dents, and trade-ins for up to 50% off the original prices. You have an old computer you want to trade in? No problem. We take any brand of computer on trade. We even transfer your pictures and files over to your new PC Laptops computer for free. And to make it extra fluffy, we're doing 0 down, 0 interest financing for half a year. OAC. So get into any of our 9 locations right now or call us at 1-877-596-SAVE. Check us out at PCLaptops.com. At PC Laptops, we love you!
You're listening to Utah's first #1 talk station. K-Talk, AM 630, KTKK, Sandy, Salt Lake City. The whole truth and nothing but the truth.
CNN Radio, I'm Michelle Wright. Our top story this hour, Libya's civil war and what's going on between troops loyal to leader Muammar Gaddafi and those against him. CNN's Arwa Damon reports opposition troops had hoped to be in the capital of Tripoli by now.
They are encountering increasing difficulty in trying to break through the pro-Gaddafi front lines and take over some of these very critical cities that lie in their route to reach Tripoli itself.
Meanwhile, the White House says sending ground troops to Libya is just one of the many options being considered by President Obama, but it's not at the top of the list. But all options must be strongly considered.
I think that it would be premature to send a bunch of weapons to a post office box in eastern Libya. We need to not get ahead of ourselves.
Spokesman Jay Carney says any military intervention in the Civil War must be well considered. 14 Democratic Wisconsin lawmakers who left the state to prevent a vote on a controversial budget plan deny there's any agreement in place for them to return. Governor Scott Walker says the leader of the group, State Senator Mark Miller, is blocking any hopes of a deal.
For us to move forward, we need to have reasonable and responsible elected officials stand up and decide it is time to set aside those who would stand in the way.
However, Miller says he's requesting a meeting with Walker about the issue. The man accused of being the East Coast rapist made his first appearance before a judge today. Aaron Thomas was arrested in New Haven, Connecticut 3 days ago. He's linked to the sexual assaults of 17 women from Virginia to Rhode Island since 1997. The shuttle Discovery is separated from the International Space Station for the last time today. The shuttle is set to return to Earth on Wednesday. I'm Michelle Wright. You know you can get our hourly updates on the CNN iPad and the Android app? This is CNN Radio.
There are many debt relief plans and scams out there. So if you find yourself with $10,000 or more in credit card debt and you just want the facts about legitimate debt relief solutions available to you, then call American Credit Card Solutions for a free informational kit that will tell you about your options in simple, easy-to-understand terminology. The kit is free, the shipping is free, and there is absolutely no sales pitch, just the facts, sent directly to you in the mail. This free informational kit can be mailed to you today so you can examine all the debt relief options available in the comfort of your home with no one pressuring you to make a quick decision. Call 800-921-6622 and ask for your free kit. That's 800-921-6622. This is a first-come, first-serve offer, and kits are limited. So call right now for your free debt informational kit. 800-921-6622. That's 800-921-6622.
Ford Service presents Mike Rowe, Mad Scientist.
I'm not mad.
Ford Service presents Mike Rowe, kind of upset scientist.
No, look, I'm not a scientist at all. I'm just saying the service departments at Ford dealerships, top notch. These people have training like you wouldn't believe. And the technology, man, oh man, what I wouldn't give to have a garage full of that stuff. Computers, diagnostic machines, of course. I don't know how to work any of them, so that could be a problem.
Well, that's why you should go to your Ford dealership for the works. You can get a Motorcraft synthetic blend, oil and filter change, tire rotation, and more. Just $29.95 or less after $10 rebate.
He's right, you know. Get your car taken care of by the people who know it. I mean, really, really know it. Ford Service.
Up to 5 quarts oil, taxes, diesel, and disposal fees extra. See participating dealership or visit FordOwner.com for rebate details through 3/31/11.
It's not science.
And he's not mad.
63% of Americans are overweight. If you've decided it's time to leave your flat behind, HipFit Weight Loss is for you. HipFit changes habits. Lose the bad habits, lose the weight. HipFit is guaranteed to make your weight loss successful and has absolutely no health risks. HipFit students are not required to count calories, weigh portions, or buy specialty food. Start losing weight immediately. Call 801-635-4488. HipFit is conveniently located at Salt Lake City Family Hypnosis. Ask about our Guaranteed to Stop Smoking program. 801-635-4488.
Did you miss our biggest anniversary sale ever? Don't worry, we can still give you the same great prices in March. Get the 7-foot, 1/2 horsepower Genie garage door opener for only $199 installed. Or you can replace your front entry door for only $295 installed. We still have a few double car garage doors too for only $500 installed. Or a single car garage door only $299 installed. Remember, all our garage doors come with the exclusive lifetime maintenance program. That means if you buy a home from any of these fine builders like Ivory Homes, Perry Homes, or Reliance Homes, your garage door comes with this lifetime maintenance program. Just go to doors.com and register your home or call us at 975-7575. That's 975-7575. Prices guaranteed doors. Don't miss these incredible March prices. 975-7575. That's 975-7575. Call now.
Exposing politics as pro wrestling. Welcome to Mental Self-Defense Radio and the Jake Shannon radio program. Now, here's your host, Jake Shannon.
5-1, baby. 1 and 5. No one here.
Welcome back. Absolutely blessed to have a superstar of a guest today. His name is Mr. Neil Howe. He is the author of The Fourth Turning, a big epic book on the history of like everything. It's actually a kind of a theory of history with regards to cycles and what to expect and all kinds of stuff. Are you still there, Mr. Howe?
I'm here.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for coming on the show today. And if people are interested in your work, so not only do you have, obviously you have the books, Generations and The Fourth Turning, but tell the people a little bit about what Life Course, what that's all about.
Well, we are a consultancy. We provide services to corporations and foundations and public agencies. And this has actually led to a number of the other kinds of periodicals we've come out with. We did our probably best-selling book of the last decade was called Millennials Go to College. And it's for, colleges trying to retool themselves to sort of take advantage of what works with this new generation of kids. So we got a lot of millennials books. Recruiting millennials, I think we've consulted for every branch of the armed services. And most recently, last year, Millennials in the Workplace, to answer the questions of all these boomer and Xer managers who just can't figure these young people out, to figure out, how to, why they think they're so special and why they've been so sheltered and why they like to do everything in teams and why they go to bed with their cell phones and, all of that, why they wear flip-flops. Anyway, just that whole thing, and that's now, I think, a source of great interest, beyond K through 12 schools and colleges, and now they're getting into the workplace. I think our biggest new area of interest and focus is the economy and financial markets, because no one understands now what's happening to the stock market and the global economy. The last 13 years, it seems to have gone sideways, if not down, and no one understands why. Well, we think it's because we're moving into what I mentioned earlier was a fourth turning era, and we can look for even more volatility ahead there.
Oh, wow. So anybody that's out there that likes to invest on the spread, they might be able to make a little bit of money then, huh?
Well, we are going to, that's what we're going to be doing this year, is offering, proprietary newsletter services and other services to a lot of the financial advisors and investors who are interested in applying our method to the markets. And it's interesting that you look back, certainly in American history, and you can see that the second and fourth turnings, the awakenings and the crises, have been the worst, by far the worst for the stock markets. By contrast, the first and third turnings, like the 1950s and the 1990s, have been very good for stock markets. And this pattern goes all the way back.
So really, Life Course then is leveraging your access and your expertise as a demographer for marketing purposes in a simple sense.
Yeah, more as an historian, because this isn't strictly speaking all just population numbers driving this. This is the collective personality of these different generations. And I will say though that almost no historian does what I do. They would consider me a complete heretic, because most historians think there is no such thing as a pattern into history. History never rhymes. It's always different. It's completely random. It's a stochastic walk.
Sure.
But we don't believe that's true. We don't believe for example, that the next decade is just as likely to be like the 1960s as like the 1990s. We don't think history is random. History is seasonal. There's certain seasons that always tend to follow other seasons, and by looking closely at history, you can really figure that out. It ought to be common sense, actually.
You know, one of the challenges, and you just have to forgive me because like I said, I wrote this book on the history of wrestling, and here's a challenge I had, and my own personal curiosity. You know, wrestling, for example, was a field where, for a long time, the promoters were presenting it as real when it was really fake. Okay, right?
Right.
That was so challenging to sift through the data with that, and given that, with regards now, if we were to kind of blow that up to a larger scale to maybe governments that have disinformation operations like intelligence agencies and stuff, spinning certain news items a certain way, how is it, that's a challenge. I mean, is there any specific technique to kind of get past that kind of disinformation or distortion in the data?
Well, we don't look at people's interpretations except as evidence of the mood itself. I mean, what we look at is behavior, and we have a lot of measures of behavior been taken by government and other people, and surveys. So we look directly at attitudes and behavior and how these have changed over time. For example, look at things like substance abuse. Okay.
Yep.
Historically, this is mainly concerned alcohol consumption per capita. Okay. So looking at the rise and fall of alcohol consumption per capita, it's interesting that one almost universal trend, not only in America but in other societies, is that alcohol consumption peaks usually somewhere in the middle of or toward the end of these second turning awakening eras we talk about. These great awakenings.
So that's the time to buy stock in Anheuser-Busch.
in the great liquor companies. But you never know, because during the awakenings, people can make it themselves, or who knows how they get it. But the point is, it's the regularity of this trend. For example, at the height of the Second Great Awakening, when Andrew Jackson was finally elected in 1828, the whole crowd became so rip-roaring drunk they went in and practically trashed the White House. They went in. That was one of the peak eras, the peak decades of alcohol consumption per capita in the 19th century. An astronomical amount of liquor was being consumed. That fell by more than half by the eve of the Civil War.
So really what you're saying, and again, this is me speaking to the nerds or the statisticians out there, you're saying that, sure, look out for type 1 error, but also you have to look for a type 2 error. Like, there might actually be patterns out there that really are indicating something like this cyclical behavior.
Well, there are patterns, and if you never look for them, of course you'll never find them.
Sure. Okay. Let me get to Mark. He wants to ask you a question. You got time for one more question?
Absolutely.
Okay, hold on just a sec. And Mark, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, so ask
away.
Actually,
just kind of one more question, Neil. Because back when I first read Fourth Turning back, 1998 or so, it was weird because I'm reading it, looking into, thinking about what it would be like to live through crisis eras and so forth. And recently, when I read it again, I'm kind of a nerd. I read your book several times, but
we love these kinds of readers.
Exactly. And I tell this to people too. I'm always posting on my Facebook, articles that basically are saying what you've talked about back in 1998. And I say now to people, I go, your book reads like a newspaper. When I'm looking through that, the thing is though, I still feel the same as I did back in 1998. So my, kind of a two-part question. Do you think we're in the fourth turning now? And if so, will there ever be a stage where we feel different, or do we just live our lives and kind of deal with what's thrown at us?
The answer to one of your questions is yes. I think we probably have entered the fourth turning, and probably if we go back and choose a date, as good as one as any would be with 2008, sure. Which was an historic election. Barack Obama, with political repercussions that still have yet to be played out, combined with one of the greatest crashes of the global financial system since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, a 60% decline in global, stock equity worldwide. And now, it's recovered, to a fair extent since then. But I think everyone realizes we've entered into a new era of total uncertainty, and in which any disturbance, a threat of disturbance, will now be far more toxic to the system. We're also entering an era, and I think this is becoming clear, of complete political dysfunction in this country in terms of political leadership. You can't even pass a budget anymore in Washington, D.C. The entire government's been a continuing resolution that now looks like we're going to be doing it every 2 weeks or something.
Wow.
It's scary, and even worse and more alarming is what's going on at the state and local level, the complete inability to compromise, to come to any kind of consensus. I mean, I'm looking at this now objectively. I'm not saying, who's right and who's wrong. I'm just saying you objectively look at this situation and you think, what's it going to take to fully emerge out the other side of this?
Yeah.
With enormous, massive unfunded liabilities and debts piling up, and things stuck on an autopilot, which is going to slam us right into the mountainside. And you think, what's happening here? How are we going to get out? Well, we are going to get out of it, but things are going to have to get much worse before they get better. I think it's fair to say that Congress and Obama, the Republican freshman Tea Party class and Obama are tinkering at the very edges of the problem.
Yeah.
And that's what's frightening. I mean, neither one is really even grappling with the center of gravity, the fiscal problem, which, as we all know, are the enormous entitlement programs. And so you think, well, if neither side is even really working on the main problem, where's this going to lead us? So I think that everyone often tells me, because I'm in Washington and I deal with fiscal policy, how are we going to get out of it? What reform plan is going to get out of it? And it's not the plan that's going to get us out of it. It's something that's going to scare the daylights out of everybody. And that's when you're going to feel different. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Does that answer your question, Mark?
Definitely. That's great.
Well, hey, thanks for the call, Mark.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask you, the name of this show, Mr. Howe, is Mental Self-Defense Radio. And I'm curious if you could share, and again, I know that you make your money through your life course. And what is that website? Lifecourse.com?
Lifecourse.com, yeah.
And then they could also go to fourthturning.com.
It's a forum, yeah, sure.
Okay, and then Amazon.com, they just type in The Fourth Turning and you pop up, right?
Yeah, and the easiest thing is just to type in the name of the book or my name just into Google. That'll give them plenty of choices. Okay, great. So my question is this. The show is called mentalselfdefense.com. Given this automatic pilot into the side of the mountain that you're saying, what are some broad strokes? What can people do now that might be able to help, at least on the personal level, if not on the policy level? Well, on your personal level, it's to limit your exposure, your personal exposure. I mean, financially, diversify. I think that I think also to be plugged into your community and to be plugged into your neighbors. I mean, one of the things we've always seen in fourth turning periods is that people have to rely, often very suddenly, much more on local strangers than they ever did before.
That's because of the networking breaking down of some sort?
Exactly. That's because all the official institutions break down, and suddenly you realize you're stranded except for your friends and your community, who you may not have gotten to know very well.
And then on a policy level, you mentioned entitlements. Just get rid of them, or what's the answer? Well, the answer is that you have to say, here's where we need to be. Put your stake in the ground, say 15 years out or 20 years out. This is where we need to be to achieve not just fiscal solvency, but a sane national balance sheet, where as an economy we're actually saving every year and preparing for our future and replacing our infrastructure and the rest of it. And then you got to say, okay, given that, how do we actually get there? Now, that's going to make everybody gulp about 10 times, and generally in Washington, no one asks that question because they know that the actual reforms that you'll have to implement are going to be
pretty large.
Yeah,
No,
unpopular, and that's the quickest way to not. That's the quickest way to lose an election is to tell people they're going to have to be a little austere.
Exactly. Well, it loses an election now, but it won't lose an election in the face of another global financial meltdown. In fact, here's actually the tragedy of it. I mean, Rahm Emanuel was right. A crisis in history. Remember, he said a crisis is a terrible thing to waste.
Yeah, don't let it go to waste. Sure.
Yeah. Well, two mistakes they made. First of all, they talked about it. FDR knew that very well, but never actually cynically said something like that. Right? That was his first mistake. And second mistake is he did let it go to waste. Right? He didn't do anything substantive or major in terms of a strategic change of course. In the healthcare system, he took a bad system, made it somewhat larger, put it on a faster growth course, and then said it's fixed.
Wow.
A system that already doesn't work, spends on all the wrong things, leads to the most grossly inflated healthcare bill per capita in the world with no apparent return to our health. He just made it bigger. And he said, okay, I'll fix healthcare. Well, this is the attitude that will not be tolerated as we get deeper into the fourth turning. It's going to become clear that the only way we're going to get out of this situation is to actually solve the problem, not to appear to be solving the problem.
Well, you know, Mr. Howe, I really appreciate your time today. Feel free to plug away anything that you want to mention, lifecourse.com, fourthturning.com, anything else.
I think that's it, and at some point we'll check in again. I'd love to do it.
Yeah, hey, thank you so much for your time. Again, Neil Howe, wonderful, very smart man. Thank you again, and we'll talk to you very soon.
Okay, Jake. Thanks again.
Okay. Mental Self-Defense Radio, that's what we're all about. Sharing the goods and getting the real brains on the line so you can talk to them, so you can learn from them. Mental Self-Defense Radio.
Voice of Utah. AM 630 K-Talk.
K-Talk.com.
Number one for the most live, local, two-way talk.
I got your number on the wall. I got it for a good time
So that was quite the interview. That will be up on the archives at mentalselfdefense.com tonight. Be sure to check it out. We also have in the archives our interview with Dr. Thomas Saz, which was a huge hit. A lot of people really enjoyed that. The thing that's fascinating to me is about history, you know? And this is the thing, you know, he said that his views might be considered hereditary, you know, like he's a heretic or that it's an outside view, but he certainly seems to have great predictive power with this particular view of history. So what does that mean? You know, I love talking to people like that because he actually, one of the things that I'm concerned with is this replacement rate, you know, but he seems to believe that the United States, our replacement rate is above just a maintenance level, and we're actually growing. And this is a demographer, a very well-respected demographer. So, yeah, exciting times. And this week we're going to have some super duper guests. Like I said, we just had best-selling author Neil Howe, The Fourth Turning, talking about demography and history and cycles of generations, all kinds of things. Tomorrow on the show, be sure to tune in. We are going to have another huge hero of mine. Sometimes I think that's the thing that I like the most about doing this show is I'm able to reach out and have these good, meaningful conversations and share the ideas of these great men. Tomorrow's show, we're going to have Sheriff Richard Mack. Now, I do not know if you know who that is, but I'm going to tell you. Richard Mack is a superhero for the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment is the amendment in the Bill of Rights that gives states, like the state of Utah, its sovereignty. So if we were to pass laws that the government, like this new Sound Money Act, that we can use gold and silver as legal tender, that the feds can't swoop in and say, As a matter of fact, I'm looking up the 10th Amendment. Amendment 10. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Sheriff Mack went to bat for this. As a matter of fact, he filed suit. It was Mack and Prince versus the USA. This was during the Clinton administration, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and a lot of people who are big fans of the 10th Amendment really feel that this brought it back. It was over basically about gun rights and the federal government coming in and telling the local sheriffs what they had to do. And Sheriff Mack said, you know what, I don't. I know the Constitution, and you can't force me. And he didn't back down. Now, I met Sheriff Mack, I guess it was probably 10 years ago. We were both speaking at the same event here it was at the community college. And there was, it was called the Axiom Conference. And he came in to speak. And I spoke as well, and we got to know each other. And then when I ran against Jason Chaffetz for the 3rd Congressional District, I ran as a Libertarian. Again, fully aware of the fact that third parties don't win, but it did give me a loud enough bullhorn to make my point. But Mack endorsed my run as well. Now, the thing that's also cool, not only just the fact that he's this total just hero for the 10th Amendment, for the Bill of Rights, Mack also spent a good amount of his law enforcement career in Provo. Now, he lives in Arizona now, and that's where he does most of his work. He's based out of there, but he does a lot of stuff, on the federal level. But he spent a tremendous amount of time in Provo. So he really understands Utah and the Bill of Rights. And he's also, he speaks a lot with the organizations like Oath Keepers. I don't know if you're familiar with them. So he will be on the show tomorrow. So that is another outstanding super knockout show we're going to have tomorrow. Big time guest here on Mental Self-Defense Radio. Be sure to get all your questions, do your homework tonight, and call in tomorrow, 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Now, today at 4 o'clock, Mills asked the question, is there a new mafia coming to Utah? Murder, mayhem, and more is what Craig Bramble and company have in store for our state. Find out more this afternoon at 4 o'clock on Drive Time Live with Mills Crenshaw on Utah's #1 talk station for the most live, local, two-way talk, AM 630 K-Talk. That's today. Mills has always got a great show. And then on Wednesday on Mental Self-Defense Radio, we are going to have Chris Slattery on the show. And this promises to be a very controversial show. Chris is a very, not just controversial, but he has been a very successful pro-life activist. I mean, he's all over the place. You can look him up. Again, go to Yahoo or Bing or something. Look up Chris Slattery. He is all over the place. And so he's going to be telling us a little bit about his experiences on the front lines with regards to the controversial issue of abortion and from the pro-life perspective. So again, you may want to do your homework and call in. 2 rules always apply on Mental Self-Defense Radio. Be interesting and be civil. Boy, what a nice show that was, huh? That was exciting to talk to Mr. Howe. What do you think? How reliable is history? I mean, we have people saying, oh, well, that's revisionist history, or, speculating with what are called counterfactuals in history. How do we even know what we know? That's a scary thought. I mean, it affects every aspect of our lives. Do we just take it on faith? How do we know that they weren't mistaken, the people writing down the history in these great books? I mean, heck, emails and today we have electronics doing most of our, being the medium with which we communicate, and there's still problems. But back then they were like handwriting things, like the monks in Ireland handwriting all these documents to keep them alive for future generations. Could they not have made a mistake? Or maybe when nobody was looking, they changed it to fit their particular worldview? These are things that are, I don't know, they fascinate me. I find it difficult. Philosophers talk about first-hand and second-hand knowledge. First-hand knowledge being that which you know from your own personal experience, things that came in through your eyes and your ears and your skin, things that only you know. And that is, you do know that. But even then, memory isn't totally infallible. You can make mistakes with your memory. We've seen plenty of cases overturned by DNA evidence proving that their memories, their testimony was wrong. That there was no way that what they thought happened, and they were probably sincere, was in fact wrong. And that's first-hand knowledge. That's the best we can do. Second-hand knowledge is knowledge that we get from other people. Somebody tells us, or we read in a book or see it on TV. But we know things like propaganda, or, people lie, or people are misinformed. Like I said, like the telephone game. Somebody could tell you one thing, and you think you're telling the next person the exact same thing you heard, but your own personal biases or lack of attention distorts the message. It's a challenge. How do we really know what anybody is even talking about and if it's true? I think that sometimes we get so confident and so worked up and passionate and emotional about things, we forget that, wow, we're human. We could make mistakes. And in some cases, with regards to things like public policy or wars or the death penalty, you make a mistake and it's somebody's life that may have been innocent or not involved otherwise. So that's the importance of language and words and trying to think about these issues, thinking about thinking. It's always amazing to me how many people spout off and have these huge opinions, and maybe they're just wrong. And it's just a con game, a confidence game. They're just so confident about what they say. You just say, okay, I'll take it, without vetting it yourself, without looking it up, without doing the research. That's why I say at the beginning of every show, I may not agree with what you say, but I will always fight for your right to say it. I could very well be wrong. I look forward to hearing dissenting opinions because I could very well be wrong, and it's a learning opportunity. I do have an open mind. Now, granted, it's guarded by a pit bull that I call logic, but if you can get past that pit bull, I am always open to hearing what you have to say. So that made me feel kind of good. That was interesting, Mr. Howe saying that on one side, these entitlement programs and the inability of people to actually solve problems in Washington, D.C. could lead us on a autopilot, slam us into the side of a mountain. And then on the other side, that this new generation coming up, that whenever we've had this kind of turmoil, that we've always risen to the occasion. It's like that old, I think it was JFK said, crisis in Chinese is made up of two characters. One is danger and the other is opportunity. And a lot of it has to do with our intention and where we want to go. So it's one thing, to call in and gripe and complain about XYZ, and that's good. Criticism's good, but we also have to come up with solutions. We hear so much talk about immigration. I mean, is it that hard to just get rid of the entitlements? If we don't, it's going to happen anyway. We're going to be crushed by this mountain of debt, and so the entitlements are going to go away anyway. I don't know. Those are the hard questions. I want to hear from you. What do you think? I also want to know if you called up your congressman about this HB 59 coming back to get us. Did you call him up and say, hey, I don't want you to be doing these warrantless searches and seizures? At least go run this by somebody else, a judge. I don't want you just digging around in my, pull me over and say, oh, I'm going to detain you. And that's what that's really saying. So sometimes, we were talking about the 10th Amendment with Sheriff Mack coming on tomorrow. Sometimes states' rights can be a great thing, like this Sound Money Act that just went through. And now we can use gold and silver as legal tender here in Utah. That's a state law. But at the same time, we have to be careful that things like HB 59 and this warrantless searches and seizures bill doesn't go through. So, of course, you can call me. Call me and give me a report. Let me know what's going on. Have you called your congressman? Done your slacktivism for today? Again, that switchboard up on on Capitol Hill, 801-538-1029. Again, voting no on HB 59 if, that is, you care about the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. That number again, up Capitol Hill, the switchboard, 801-538-1029. And, of course, our numbers here, 801-254-5855 in Salt Lake County, 801-470-5855 in Utah County, and 801-670-5855 in Weber and North Davis County. So, is history just that, a story? Or does history have some sort of basis in fact? One of the things I was mentioning to Mr. Howe was this, again, I've worked as a statistician, and one of the challenges you have to look out for is what's called a type 1 error or a type 2 error. Now, in common everyday language, a type 1 is a false positive. So, for example, you take a pregnancy test, it says you're pregnant and you're actually not pregnant. That would be a false positive. And while false positives are, they suck, you want to get the right information. You got to think about it. Which is worse, a false positive, something saying you're pregnant when you're really not pregnant, or a false negative, a pregnancy test that says, no, you're not pregnant when you really are? Well, I guess that depends on your appetite for risk, but in my world, I'm more concerned about the false negatives. I mean, you think about it from kind of a survival standpoint. If we were out in the jungle and I heard a rustle in the leaves, I would much rather make a false negative error and say, oh, that rustle in the leaves, it could be a jaguar or a lion or something and eat us, and prepare for that, and then later find out, oh, no, that was just wrong. I'd rather be more concerned on that side, which, sometimes people call you paranoid or a conspiracy theorist or whatever. Because if it is proven wrong, it's wrong. It's still wrong. I'd rather be in that camp than the ones that just dismiss it and say, oh, that rustle in the leaves, that's nothing. And then it actually is a lion or a tiger and then eats you and your family. I know it's a silly example, but you get my point. And what's funny is, a lot of people talk about it. You hear the guy who runs Skeptic Magazine, Michael Shermer, brings up this concept of patternicity, or sometimes it's called apophenia, which is when you see something, a pattern that's not there, like the man in the moon, right? The man in the moon, there's not really a man in the moon, there's not a face in the moon, but the craters and all that, and your mind imposes this meaning. Well, that is an error. There's not really a man up there. But in the same way, some of these conspiracy theories that have been proven true are the flip side. The things that really were there that we dismissed, oh, that's crazy, that's kooky, that's a crackpot idea, and then we actually get bit in the rear end because it came out to be a fact, because we were lazy, and we just called somebody a name like a kook or a crackpot. Like I said, I think these type 2 errors really need to be vetted more carefully than the type 1 errors. The false positives a lot of times provide less risk than the false negatives. And that's really the essence of what Mr. Howe was talking about. He is seeing a pattern, and then some people are saying, that's crazy, there's no pattern there. There really is. Mental Self-Defense Radio, K-Talk, the voice of Utah. We'll be back. Come back after the break.
AM 630, K-Talk. Utah's most experienced talk radio team. Now at k-talk.com.
Searching for the perfect golden deep-fried battered halibut and cod? Maybe you would prefer a delicious flame-grilled burger or seafood chimichanga, bursting with lobster meat, crab, and diced green chilies. Well, Neil's Halibut and Seafood is the place for you to go. Neil's offers succulent, crisp, tasty fish, prepared the way it should be. Neil's fresh homemade clam chowder, Parmesan halibut, and grilled halibut or salmon will have you returning time and time again. And when you're in the mood for something different, there's always something new and unique on Neil's menu. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You truly are in for a treat. Indulge yourself on a grilled or crispy fish taco, complemented with Neil's homemade coleslaw. Nobody else makes coleslaw like Neil's. Drop into Neil's for football Mondays and Thursdays and enjoy your favorite fish taco or a cold one on draft, both only 99 cents after 6 p.m. You'll find Neil's Halibut and Seafood in Draper at 122nd East and 123rd South, just off I-15. Neil's Halibut and Seafood is worth the drive. Open 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week. Dine in or take out. Neil's does it right.
Almost all of the furniture sold in Utah is made in China. And in my opinion, that furniture is junk. Your old furniture is usually of better quality than the new stuff you might buy. The stores are full of furniture that looks really good, but it's not designed for durable usage. Reupholstery is an inexpensive way to have beautiful and durable furniture. The craftsmen I work with will do exceptional work for you. Styling is important in upholstered furniture, but functionality is even more important. We can change the arm and back of the sofa or chair, add, remove, or change the skirt. We can replace the legs with a more contemporary or traditional styling. A simple, standard sofa can be reupholstered in a quality sale fabric for under $500. Yet the real advantage to reupholstery is to reveal your creative side and make your furniture extraordinary. Call me, Jim Kirkwood, at 801-915-9927 for a free estimate. That's 801-915-9927. Again, 801-915-9927.
The voice of Utah. AM 630 K-Talk.
K-Talk.com.
Number one for the most live, local, two-way talk.
I see the bad moon rising. I see trouble on the way. I see earthquakes and lightning.
Welcome back, Mental Self-Defense Radio. I am your host, Jake Shannon, bringing you big name guests, awesome guests, guys like Neil Howe, guys like Thomas Sawes, guys like, tomorrow, Sheriff Richard Mack. Man, I love my job. Now, we've got waiting on the line, we've got Wendy in West Jordan. What's going on, Wendy?
Oh, hi. Thanks for having me. As an aside, I'd like to say I love my job, too. I deal with all kinds of people, and it's fun, and there's a lot of psychology involved, which you kind of learn in the School of Hard Knocks.
What's your job, Wendy?
I do interviews. I'm a field representative. And
what kind of interviews?
Government ones. I go where the computer tells me to go and nowhere else. They're all statistical.
But who do you interview?
I interview everybody because the computer picks addresses across the United States at random. So it's whoever. And once I went to an address and I asked the lady across the street, I said, "Where's this house number?" And she said,
so what is this, the Census Bureau or something?
Yeah, and also RTI International as well.
Okay.
And she said, "See that hole across the street by the porta potty? That's the house." It was demolished yesterday, she says. But anyway, one of the most miraculous things to me in the last few years has been the Internet. But you have to be prepared to use it. And I'm too cheap to have it at home, and I don't want to mess with viruses and, all those other nasty things that can creep in. So I go to the library because we're blessed with libraries every 2 or 3 blocks, And so I pop in and I look at other people around me, whether they're children, teenagers, or adults, and I can see at a glance they're not doing anything worthwhile. But there's so much information out there, including primary sources, historical documents, documents that lead you to other documents. But most people, they have a big problem, especially in this state. It's called lack of education, lack of imagination, and a lot of brainwashing. And to me, with the information out there, I'm going to step on some toes right now. To me, when I know a certain person from all the historical data is an absolute scoundrel, one of the world's great scoundrels that perpetrated, financial scams, stole other men's wives, seduced teenagers, did bogus land deals, took advantage of his fellows whenever he could financially, and still to this day, people consider him a prophet. I mean, what is that? It just proves to me that this thing about leading the horse to water and not making it, it won't drink it unless it's willing to.
Well, this is a secular show, so I don't necessarily get into religious stuff. I am not LDS, so
yeah, but I'm talking about
I don't really know
history.
about any of that kind of stuff. But what I can say is that, yeah, you're right. I do think that it is a lot of brainwashing going on. I don't think it's just this state. I think that the very fact that there is a government monopoly on education is absolutely frightening.
Oh, yes. In England, people would put their kids down at birth to go to a private school because you had to do that. You had to get in line as soon as you were born, basically. And I do like the idea of the charter schools. I think, there's a little bit more broadening in those respects. But, I figured out, in spite of all its problems, and I hated England for the socialism and the degeneracy. I mean, I was lucky to be raised there just from an educational standpoint. I was quite fortunate. And I did call the governor to tell him to veto that stupid bill, 116. And I said, I told the lady who answered the phone, I actually bumped into him.
116 was about what? Refresh my memory.
That's the amnesty for the illegal aliens.
Oh, sure.
And I said, well, I bumped into him while the thing was still in session. I was going to leave a note for Chris Butters and Wayne Harper to look into Luz Robles because she's an agent for the Mexicans. I had a really good show on K-Talk about that because she was meeting on a regular basis with the Mexican government even after she was elected. And I said to the lady on the phone, we don't need the Mexican government telling our Utah legislatures what to do. And he said, when I bumped into him, he said, oh, well, we're looking into that. And then a few days later, they said, we decided not to investigate that after all.
Yeah, like they didn't investigate the governor's greasing the palm of certain contractors over, that happened to be friends of his.
And I have to brag that I voted for Peter Kroon. I don't care if he is a Democrat. He would try to stop spending taxpayer money on that stupid soccer stadium. And actually, one of my relatives the other day said, well, these sports people, they have a lot of money. You look what they pay the players. They can build their own stupid stadiums. Why should a poor little old lady who's about to lose her house because the property taxes are so high, why should she have to fork out for that stupid thing?
Well, the funny thing is, you mentioned the Internet, too. The scary thing is, and this is why I raised this issue with the historian Neil Howe that we just had about distortion of information, especially with regards to our own governments. Actually England was the first. They had what they called black chambers, which was essentially like our CIA or our NSA or any of these kind of
spy organizations.
Yeah, these extra legal organizations. And so on one end you have people being fed what to think, or maybe actually not being taught to think at all in these state-run education facilities. And then on the other side, I just saw this article come up, and this was on. This is PC World, okay? They're not biased. They don't have, they don't have like a Republican or a Democrat bent. It's
they
PC
don't
World.
have a political agenda.
And the headline on it reads, Army of Fake Social Media Friends to Promote Propaganda. This isn't PC World. This isn't a political magazine.
Right.
This is a magazine that's concerned about computers.
Technology.
And they're sitting here and they're saying, does a code of ethics still exist in intelligence firms? Does it disappear behind closed doors? Dirty deeds done in the dark and used against the American people who are supposed to be free to express themselves. What they're saying, and they've got the documentation here. It's, again, one of my favorite organizations. The Electronic Frontier Foundation did the research. But supposedly the FBI and some other groups like the U.S. Air Force, they're actually, a big part of their budget is to pay for bloggers and people to go onto like Facebook and Twitter.
To influence, huh?
To influence policy.
Yeah, well, obviously these guys are smart. They figure out all the angles, and the people are mostly like sheep, and they want to be like everybody else. Oh, I got to be on Facebook, and I got to Twitter, and all this other garbage. They can't think for themselves. So it's easy to manipulate them, and this just gives them another avenue to achieve their end.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of this show, Mental Self-Defense Radio, is mental self-defense, and it's easy. The other way, the thing that it used to be called was a classical education.
Yes, well, that's what I had. I actually learned Latin and Greek at school.
Well, they used to teach grammar, logic, and reason, the trivium, and that's nowhere in the public school. Now, I got a couple other people here, Wendy. Thank you so much for the call. It's crazy times. We've got Lynette. Lynette calling us back. Lynette, are you there?
I am.
How are you?
I called for HB 59, about that.
Yep.
But I want to tell the listeners that sometimes they let you send up to 5 messages. They just let me send up to 3, but
yeah, you get 3 is what I understand.
And then they'll place the notes right on the legislator's desk, and it doesn't have to be your congressperson. And another way to do it, you can go into le.utah.gov and find the listing of those people, and they can give you the email addresses, and you can email all of them.
And what number did you call? Did you call the 801-538-1029 number?
Yeah, I called that one.
Yeah, that's the main switchboard.
For
Wonderful.
the house.
So you actually just talked to the operator and left a message. You didn't get any feedback?
I talked to the person there, and they can write up to 5 notes during one call, and they place them on the legislator's desk.
Okay, super
during
duper.
the session.
Hey, thanks for the update, Lynette.
Alrighty, thank you.
Okay, talk to you soon. Yeah, this is what it takes, guys. Again, I call it slacktivism, because you're being like a slacker. You don't even have to get out of your chair or out of your car. You can call. 801-538-1029 is the switchboard to the Capitol. Tell them no on HB 59. The Fourth Amendment still matters as far as you're concerned. Now, we have Kathy. Hi, Kathy.
Oh, hi, Jake. I didn't even think I was going to get on. But I just wanted to say that what they are doing is raising the prices on the gas.
Who's they? Who's they, Kathy? Who
whoever
they?
They are. I don't know who they are, but they're out there. And the thing is, they've got...
Are you out there with them, Kathy?
No, I'm not there.
You might be a little out there.
I might be a different out there, but not with them.
Okay.
But I just want to say that they're raising the taxes on gas, which we've got millions of gallons underneath Utah. I've heard that.
Hey, Kathy, you got to put the receiver to your mouth.
Okay, I've told that there's millions of gallons of gas under Utah that could, and they're milking the people for no reason.
Yeah, there's some sort of refinery process, I guess, in the sand or something. They're trying to figure out how to get the oil out. We're actually trying to get a local entrepreneur on the show to discuss that.
And then we've got everybody being, their property taxes have been raised, and the elderly and the little mother and fathers that have children, they can't hardly pay their property taxes.
And then they tried to get this food tax passed, which didn't, thank goodness, but my goodness, they're taxing everything. I mean, that's my question, Kathy.
Yeah.
You tell me, you're out there, tell me, why do they always talk about cutting spending? Why is that the big buzzword now that all these talking heads on TV talk about, but they never talk about cutting taxes? Why
well,
is
they
that?
They don't want to cut their spending. They don't want to cut their big paychecks, but they want to give everyone vaccinations and flu shots so we can kill them off, and they can take all that money they were giving to those poor little innocent people.
Oh, hey, you know what, Kathy? I got something special for you.
Oh, dear.
Okay, are you sitting down?
Yeah.
Are you holding onto your seat?
Sort of.
Are you holding onto your hat?
I don't have a hat.
Okay, good. Okay. Listen, Wednesday, on this very program, we're going to have a gentleman by the name of Chris Slattery. Did you hear me mention who he was?
Not really.
He is a very big pro-life advocate and activist.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, is that?
Well,
I mean, that's like right up your alley.
Well, also, I just think everyone out there that had any kind of who worked in those abortion clinics should have their brains sucked out and their heads cut off. That should be their punishment, their final punishment for all the millions of babies they killed.
Yeah, it is pretty scary. I think you should call back with that suggestion for Chris on
Maybe
Wednesday.
I will.
Okay.
If I can.
But
okay.
don't make it so scary, okay?
Well, they need to be scary.
I know, but that's graphic.
Because they've been doing it to innocent babies.
See, that's what makes me think you're out there.
Lives.
When you say, I agree, they're innocent lives. I agree with you. I don't disagree with that.
I'm out here, but I'm listening to the different points of view.
Yeah. Well, I've got a guy that you are going to love.
Well, maybe, yeah.
I think you are. So definitely tune in on Wednesday and tomorrow.
If I can, sure.
Okay, good. Tomorrow we're going to have Sheriff Mack. Do you know who that is?
Oh, I had books on Sheriff Mack.
Yeah, he's going to be on the show tomorrow. You want to call him? You should call tomorrow and talk to him.
Well, he's a good person. I might just, if I think of something, I might.
Okay, Kathy. Hey, thank you so much for the call. Kathy, man, she's a regular. I love her. And she is out there, but she's a good guy, I think. I think she's one of the good people. A little out there. Sweetest voice you ever heard. But I wanted to remind you, HB 59. Lynette reminded us, she called in, I've been talking about this, and actually Elizabeth sent me a message on Facebook. So I think this is a very good thing. You know, of course, you can always reach me online. Find our website, which is mentalselfdefense.com. You can find our Facebook page, Twitter, all that kind of high-tech doodad stuff. But you can always message me direct. You can send me an email, info@mentalselfdefense.com. But you've got to call the state capitol, 801, let me get that number, 801-538-1029. That's the switchboard. You can leave 3 different messages about this HB 59. Tell them no. You still believe in the Constitution and you want those rights. They can't take them away from you. It's violating your Fourth Amendment right, just in case you didn't know. This warrantless search and seizure. As a matter of fact, one of these days I think we're going to run a contest and I'm going to give away constitutions. Nice little, they're the ones put out by the Cato Institute. They really look nice. And they're small. They're like a pocket constitution. I think we're going to run a contest. Maybe we'll do a trivia contest. So tomorrow, Sheriff Mack, tune in. Mental Self-Defense Radio. K-Talk.